everyone, welcome back. This week we are finally getting started on the slice. So I hope you've been watching the videos leading up to this point. We started by blocking in what we wanted to paint, which this painting we are doing an orange and a slice. And then the next video we did the orange and started layering on those thick layers of paint, and then I went back into it the last video, just tweaking it to where it was where I wanted it to be. And so today we are working on the slice, which will have a lot more detail and really bring out what this painting is about, and that's the fruit, the orange. This last week, my husband was walking by, and like I told you in my other videos, listening to other people's critiques, whether they're artists or not, is very important because you want to know what your viewer thinks. You can listen to their advice, you don't always have to take it, but listen to it. And it's important to hear what the viewer, someone with different eyes, sees. And he was telling me how he thinks that the orange slice didn't look like it was in front of the orange. And he said, maybe I'm premature in saying this, but it just doesn't look like it's in front. And I told him, just wait and you'll see how I'll bring this one forward like I did this one with the lighter colors. Here makes it seem like it's more forward and it's more vibrant. And this one's dull. And that's just because we haven't painted into it yet. And you'll see why I added the shadow here and how I'm showing that this is overlapping the orange. So let's get started. What I did is I took an orange and I sliced it up because I want something to reference while I am painting the slice. Now, like I said in the very first video, we're not doing exact realistic oranges. We're doing an orange but with a little bit more character and a little bit more fun to it. And that is why I'm using it just as a reference, but not as an exact reference, I guess is the best way to say it. I moved the camera a little bit closer this time so you can get a little bit closer view of the orange. So I have my sliced orange and it smells wonderful in here. Makes me really want to dig into this, but I'll be patient and wait until after the video and I'll eat my orange and probably share with my son who just loves oranges. And of course I have my paint prepped. I'm using a different plate this time because I ran out of paper plates, the bigger ones, so I found these in our cupboard and I plan on buying some more maybe tomorrow if we go shopping, or I don't know. But anyways, so I'm going to pull out my palette knife. Now you see I have two different palette knives here. And I have been using this more diamond shaped one. And it's a little thinner at the top. Then this one has a little staining on it from bad upkeep on my part. But it is more of a thinner shape. And I'll probably be working with both palette knives today, just getting a different feel for the different sizes. So I'm going to start with this bigger one. And remember, I like to use the bottom of the palette knife, which would be up here, and not the top part, because it's easier to kind of paint on, kind of like you're icing a cake, which is kind of like what we're doing. We're laying paint down like icing. So that doesn't taste like icing though. So like I did with the orange, we're going to just lay down a base layer of wet paint. And so we're going, I don't want to use all my yellow that I have squared out on my plate here. Mostly because I plan on going back with the yellow. So since it's a smaller plate, I'm going to have to be a little bit more careful in my mixing. So I don't mix my other colors on my palette in my orange. So let's get started. We're just laying down a base layer like we've done before, we'll go back in with the different colors to show that detail. Making sure that I'm getting you in the shot so you can see what I'm doing here. Now we do have to be a little bit more careful when we come up to the edge here, because I don't want to completely paint over what I've done, but I did do a little bit of overlapping when I painted the full orange. So we'll kind of go over on top of that. And because this paint is thick, actual layering with the paint can show that the slices in front of the orange. And that's what we're going to be doing. So like I told you about what my husband said, we will be addressing that in this. And hopefully when he comes by and he looks at it, he will see that what he talked about and told me and addressed was addressed. Looks like I got a little blue in my paint. See, that's what I get for having a small palette. That might be a problem. So I might have to run and get a second palette, but we'll see what happens. Okay, so we got that nice layer of wet paint on top. Now, what I think I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start laying in the actual skin that you see on the orange slice. And you can see that it kind of has a variant of colors. It starts really dark, and as it works its way in towards the actual fruit, it starts to get lighter, the rind of the orange. So that's what we'll do, is we'll start with the red. And now don't forget, we are going to go back in with the blue, but I'm just kind of laying out the actual orange and the detail here before I can really decide where I want that blue. Because I haven't decided where I wanted it. I've been kind of thinking about it for the last week, and I just haven't decided where exactly I want it to start. Okay, so we kind of got that red in where the skin. And of course it's thicker than where the actual skin begins and where it'll lighten up, and that's where we'll start blending. That's the great thing about the palette knife, is that you can just kind of blend it in into the orange. We'll go back in that with some more the lighter orange. I kind of blended it in there, so I'll just go back with some of the yellow. Just kind of mix right on the canvas to show that variant. Don't forget, we go back into everything. Move paint around. I tell you, I don't know if you can hear my stomach growling, but that orange is smelling good. I should have eaten a few slices before I got started. But I'll just wait until I'm done. Bring the orange back down into the red. Might seem a little messy, but we're just getting started. And if you remember how we did the orange, it started off a little messy, and we're just kind of pushing paint around until we get where we want it to be. Now, this orange isn't as it doesn't have as much white in it as I kind of want to add to show the different cavities, and I don't really know what the terms are for the texture within the actual fruit. So, delicious orange. Okay, I'm going to go in with some of the white and start showing those cavities. So I'm changing colors. I'm going to wipe off my palette knife and dip into the white and start kind of doing that. And this is when I get the orange. I can see that there is a very distinct line between the rind and the actual fruit, and there's that little bit of white membrane at the top, which I'm going to bring back in, and I'm going to go back into making that rind a little bit more detailed. A little orange juice on me. So I'm going to start and just going in with the white and kind of just marking where I want that rind to be. It's starting to get a little bit more muddy. This is the problem with working on palette knives and then trying to get detail. That's why they usually do a little bit more bigger of objects when you see palette knife paintings. And I plan on kind of going back into this, not making it so detailed. Working on it. Okay. And sometimes just the difference in the stroke of the palette knife is showing the rind. Okay. So now I'll go back into the rind a little bit, but I really am bothered by the fruit, and I want to go back into that. So I'm going to go in with a little yellow and just start painting in those cavities here between the white that I already have in, and I might go back in with more white and just kind of go back and forth and working with the paint to get what I want until it's how I want it to look. Like I said, it might not be exactly how I have it in my brain, but that's fine. This is a different painting. I'm referencing one in my head that I've seen, and I have to remember that that wasn't my painting. This is my painting, this is my technique, and I need to show that. Just add a little yellow in there, and I'll play with that a little bit. I want there to be a variety of color because, like I've said before, nothing is just one color. It might be different shades of one color, but it's never just one note. It's not going to just be red. It's going to be different shades and different tints of red. And the difference between a shade, so let's first start with vocabulary. A color, another name for a color is hue. So like the color red, you can say the hue red. Well, the difference between a shade and a tint is a shade is when you add black to a hue. And then a tint is when you add white to a hue. And the value is the range of that one hue, all the shades and the tints. So when you add black and then when you add white, and that kind of explains a little bit, hopefully for you. So when I say I'm wanting a shade, I'm talking about when I'm adding black, and then when I want a tint of a hue or a color, whichever word comes out of my mouth first, you'll know that's adding white. So I think now that I'm working with the paint, I'm kind of deciding how I'm going to lay this in. And sometimes that's all you need to do, is you can plan and think it through in your mind, but sometimes once you actually start working with the paint, you change how you actually want to do it and how you're going about the painting, and it works out better this way. Or sometimes you have an idea in your head and you just don't know how you're going to be able to accomplish it. And sometimes all you need to do is just start painting. and let yourself problem solve while you paint. That's why they say that a lot of artists are good problem solvers, because you're constantly thinking through a problem that you are addressing in a painting, and you're finding a solution, which is kind of ironic that I enjoy painting and that I problem solve every time I work on a painting. But I was so bad at problem solving in grade school, especially elementary school, when I had to take those state tests that kids have to take all the time. And I did the worst on the problem solving portion. And actually I had to have a tutor help me get better scores on it so I could pass it and move on to the next grade. So it kind of worked. And see, as I'm working, you can kind of see the membranes forming, and if you are following with me, kind of see that that is my problem solving there that I figured out, that I'm just going to let the paint create those membranes instead of doing those lines that I started with. But you can see that white kind of breaking through, and I like that. I want that. And I want those variations colored in there. Now I want to make bigger strokes, and like I said, you can always use bigger and change your strokes with your palette knife. You can use different palette knives, and like I said, I'm using a different one, and look at, I'm making it already wider. I'm working with that. Look how different that's already coming out to be. And hopefully you're getting a good shot of this on your computer or on your TV, however you're watching this video, and I will do a close-up of it once I'm done. So I like where it's at right now, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some more color variation. I was about to wipe my palette, no, I think I'm going to leave the orange that's on it and go in and add a little bit of red. And see, I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to bring in the blue. And I think I'm going to bring it in a little bit in the membranes. That's what I'm going to be calling it. I don't know if that's the technical term or what, but that's what I'm going to call these little sections in the fruit that I am working with here. I'm going to go in and just bring a little bit of blue in later once I'm done adding the red. Adding some more contrast, because remember I said I'm kind of bad about remembering not add contrast, and I sure hope my husband doesn't come in here and tell me that I need to add more contrast when I always try to do better about it. And like I said, that outside viewer can really point out those things that sometimes you just don't see. And that has a lot to do with the fact that you're just staring at the painting for so long. Like I told you before, that's why we did that second video on the orange, and I pretty much just redid it, is that I just kept looking. I walked away, and I would look at it when I'd walk by, and it looked different each time. And that's because I was getting fresh eyes each time, and I realized what I didn't like about it and what I wanted to change, and I did, and I changed it. Okay. I feel a little better about how it looks now. Obviously, the rind is not as detailed, and so maybe that would be a good place to add a little bit of the blue, and then we'll add a little blue in the center. But before I do that, I do want to add a little bit of that white on the top, like I showed you. Let's see which orange was I showing. Has a little bit of the white on the top. And especially, here I have half of one. You can see the different sections of the orange and how there's that white center where the seeds would have been. And so that's what I'd like to add a little bit of. And that can help really show the line between this orange and this slice and bring it a little bit more forward. You can kind trying to see, I don't know if you're seeing my palette, the white kind of took over my small little plate that I have, which doesn't help the fact that I have such a small plate to work with. Might be a little dimmer in the video today. It's a little cloudy here. Yesterday was just a beautiful day, and we took our son to the park and put him on the swing for the first time, and he just loved it. But he got bored kind of fast. I think it was because there was a lot of kids running around, and he was really interested in watching them. And so we just kind of moved around and tried different things, and had a good time. And I guess overnight it got cold, and it's a little colder out there today. It was a little thicker white line that I had, and so I'm going back in and kind of spreading it out and thinning it out. I'm just pushing around some paint. Hopefully that's working out, and it does seem a little one note, and that's why that blue's going to come in and show that contrast that we can really work with. I'm sorry, I'm getting out of the shot a few times when I rinse my palette knife and wipe it off. I'm just trying to get you closer in so you can get a little bit more detail. And trust me, I'll bring you in here in a little bit. Okay, so now remember when I did the blue the first time, it dried and it looked almost black. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the blue into the white like I did my second round on the full orange at the top, and I'm going to start with a lighter blue and kind of bring it down, or brighten it up in color. And remember, the blue is the darker hue, and white is the lighter hue. We're just mixing it in. Now we can debate on white and black in terms of being a color. When it comes to painting, it is a color because it's an actual difference in shade or tint or color hue that you're adding to a painting. It makes a difference. It's a color. But when you talk about light, it's different. Totally different science, and we won't get into that too much. There's just a difference there. But when it comes to painting, white is a color, black is a color. But I will say, I do sometimes argue that when I ask someone what their favorite color is, and if they tell me black, I think that's not a color. Come on, give me something else. Or they say white. White's not a color when it comes to terms of what's your favorite color. Mine is blue. If you see my house, you'll know that because pretty much every room in my house is blue. And the curtains behind me, you can see are blue. I just love that color. And I started with a different palette for my house when I went to painting, and then as things have changed and I lived with certain colors, I thought I don't like that color, and I repainted, and then we had a son, so of course I painted the room blue, and now my house is blue. So luckily the outside is actually green, so we might change that to blue too. No, I'm kidding. So we're going to go in and start adding a little bit of the blue here and there. I don't want to add too much of it, but I do want to add it for some contrast. Just kind of throwing it in there, here and there, and we'll go back and blend it in. Oop, that one just dropped right on there. A little bit too much paint on my palette knife. It's something you have to be careful. You don't want to drip everywhere. And that happens a lot when you're using a brush, and if you put too much of the liquid on it. So if you're using acrylic, you can have too much water on your brush and it'll drip. And that can be devastating if you are dripping all over your painting and on places that you had finished. Things like that. And I actually think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do blue to show the difference between the actual fruit and the rind. There, and then I'll go back in and blend that. But I want to add that contrast in there. We'll move it around here a little bit. I'm going to go in here and add some of the blue. I might actually switch to my other palette knife after I finish this, just for something different. I have been using that other palette knife so far for a while for this painting, and I think I want to keep using it for the most part. And if you notice, when you use palette knives, you kind of, when you apply the paint, you push it around, and so it's almost like a ditch that you're creating, kind of a divot in the paint, so you get closer to the board or the canvas, whichever you're working on, and then the paint kind of thickens up on the sides, and that's when you go back in and you blend, and you just need to flatten your palette knife a little bit more and make it more parallel to the actual surface you're working on. Okay, there we go. Okay. And now I think I want to add more white into the actual fruit. So I'm going to do that. And then we're going to go back in and start just blending away until I get it to where I want it to be. You don't want to blend too much, of course, because then it just becomes a muddy mess and you lose all that contrast that you were applying in the first place. I'm just going to go in and just blend the colors together. Make it more blurry, like Impressionist painting kind of ends up looking like. It's blurry. And I also was thinking about how when I was painting before I added the blue, that I wanted to make the fruit a little darker once it gets closer to the rind to show value. So I'm going to do that. So I'm going to go back in with the red. I don't know if you can hear my son in the background. He's in the living room with his dad and playing. He doesn't seem to want to take a nap this afternoon because he took one at church this morning, so at least he had a nap sometime today. So I'm going to add a little bit more red to my palette here. And then I realized as I was going back into it that I did not like how I added the blue in the actual fruit part. And that's what I felt like made it muddy. And as I'm mixing the oranges and the blues, got that brown color I told you about, is what happens when you mix two complementary colors together, is that they get kind of that brown color when mixed together. And so I try to take that out, and there's some blue in there, which is fine, but I didn't want too much blue. I did leave some blue to show the difference between the fruit and the rind, and I kind of went back into the rind a little bit, and I noticed that it was getting very dark in one note, so that's why when I tried going back into it with some more whites and yellows, and that's when I noticed it got muddy, so that's why I scraped it off and started new. So I scraped it off, started a little bit more orange in there, tried to get rid of as much of the blue as I could, and then went back and added the white and the yellow to add that contrast that I want. And I'm not sure how I feel about it just yet. I'm going to walk by it a few times. I still feel like I see some of the muddiness, and maybe it's just my eyes because I saw what it was and I didn't like where I was going with it. So I hopefully can walk away and come back, and hopefully it looks better. It is starting to get dark outside, and I can tell in the video that things are getting dark, so I'll speed it up and finish up here. So our next video will just be the background. but I will give you a brief update if I went back into the slice and tell you about what I did different and what I decided to do. And I won't bore you with that another video on the slice again, you watching me make problems and I have to struggle to find the solutions. So the next video will be the background, which will be a lot of fun, be real easy. I'm going to do white background with the modeling paste and the pumice stone, and it'll be a nice texture, and I'll tell you why I want that texture and the story behind it. And then hopefully after that, if the weather is warmer and I can work outside, I can talk you through building a frame, and I'll do a frame for this painting and kind of talk you through the very basics about that. I don't have the best power tools, but I do have a great chop saw that I got for Christmas from my parents one year that I'll pull out and kind of talk you through building a frame. And then from then on, I'm still deciding what painting I can work with you with, or we can just do some great examples of some fun things we can do with paint, or different activities to show color theory, or just different art history, or just different facts and advice I can give you. As I have some experience with painting, and I have a degree in it, so I should have some information and advice to give you if you are so willing to keep watching and keep reading my blog. So today that's it, and hopefully you'll be here for next week for the next video. Please read my blog. This is where I post the link to this video, or anywhere else, or if you're just searching through YouTube and you just stumble across these painting series videos I'm doing. Please visit my Etsy shop. This painting will be up on Etsy, and I will talk to you about the pricing of it after I build the frame for it. And we can talk about how I came to that conclusion, and if you're interested in purchasing this painting, hopefully you can check out on my Etsy shop and see about that. The link to that will be in the description below, but if it's easier, just go to Etsy and type in Brenna Daily Art, and my shop should come up. Please don't forget to go to my blog. The link again to the blog is in the description below at brennadailyart.com/blogspot. Might have gotten that wrong. Just look at the description below and you'll see the link. And please follow me on Twitter. I try to post different artistic things that I see during the week, or some interesting articles, whatever I'm seeing in the news or on social media. And so hopefully you can keep updated and keep following me, and I hope I'm helping you be the best artist that you can be. And please tune in next week, and I hope you enjoy. And if you have any questions you want me to address in the next video, please leave them in the comments below or on my blog. Thank you, and have a great week.